Maravilha. Então, vou dar aqui umas primeiras boas tardes em nome da Elsevier. Eu sou a Cristiane, gerente de marketing. Só queria explicar para vocês que a gente hoje, então, está contando com esse serviço de interpretação, tá? Porque a Jill, nossa convidada dessa tarde, ela é americana, então ela vai conduzir essa apresentação em inglês. E como é que vocês acessam, tá? Então, a hora que ela estiver falando, eu vou pedir para que vocês entrem nesse ícone que parece um mapa mundi, que deve estar aí no rodapé de vocês, perto ali do chat, do Q&A, tá? E aí vocês vão clicar, então, nesse botão e vocês vão ver, se vocês quiserem escutar a Jill, se vocês conseguirem entender, quiserem ficar em inglês, vocês podem botar o canal English ou português, ou, na verdade, o off vai ficar a língua de quem estiver falando. Vocês vão confirmando aqui para a gente nas mensagens, se todos conseguiram acessar. Tá? É bem tranquilo, então, qualquer dúvida, vocês... Olha lá, certo, consegui, maravilha. Então, agora vou, então, dar as boas-vindas, deixar vocês com a palavra com a Lilian Paiva, que é a nossa gestora de soluções de saúde, aqui da nossa divisão, que vai fazer a introdução. Jill, I'm sorry. If you want to use the interpretation button, I was just explaining this to the audience. Do you know how to use it? Are you... no, okay. So go to there is a kind of a world-wide map on the bottom. Can you see on your screen? On the bottom, there is interpretation. I can't hear you. You're on mute.
You're on mute.
Yeah,
no, I don't see that. It's
very on the bottom. Maybe your screen is over it.
It might.
You see the Q&A and the poll and something? Participant?
Yeah. I don't see a world map though.
It's just a interpretation. Really?
Lillian, you have one on yours?
Yes, you should have too, because the interpretation could be for you as well. Right now, he's translating in Portuguese, but he will be doing the opposite.
I'm so sorry, I don't see it.
Oh, well, it's okay, I guess. I just announced that Lilian then will introduce you, and then we can translate to you. Sorry about that, I don't know, I really don't know why. It should be on the bottom, it's pretty simple. Just beside the share screen and stuff.
I don't see it though.
Yeah, I don't have these either, Chris. Maybe, yeah, I don't. Maybe as panelists, maybe we don't have this resource.
You should. Well, anyways, so thank you, Jill, for participating with us. And then Lilian will introduce you to our audience, and I will leave you for the show.
Sounds great.
Bye.
Obrigada, Cris. Bom, boa tarde a todos. Muito obrigada pela participação de todos vocês. Retomando, meu nome é Lilian Paiva. Eu já vi alguns nomes ali na lista de conhecidos, mas para quem não me conhece, eu sou responsável por todas as soluções de pesquisa científica na área de saúde da Elsevier aqui na América Latina. E quero agradecer muito a presença de todos vocês. Lembrar que o tema de hoje foi um tema muito solicitado no decorrer de todas as apresentações, webinars e treinamentos que a gente fez nesse ano, e também através de uma pesquisa que nós fizemos em nossos canais de mídias sociais. Então, isso para a gente é um grande prazer, saber que a nossa, mesmo em um ano tão difícil, tão complicado, repleto de novos desafios, conseguimos estar próximos de todos vocês e ainda assim trazer um pouco de conteúdo que foi solicitado por vocês mesmo. É um prazer enorme ter a nossa palestrante de hoje, a bibliotecária Jill Koniesko, que é gerente de conteúdo da Elsevier, que de uma maneira brilhantemente didática, ela vai trazer alguns conceitos de uma revisão sistemática de qualidade na área de saúde, usando os recursos da Elsevier, principalmente o Mbase, que é uma solução que está disponível para todos vocês desde janeiro desse ano, através do portal de periódicos da CAPES para as instituições membro. A Jill vai fazer uma apresentação um pouco mais profunda dela mesma logo no início, então eu queria agradecer novamente a presença, desejar uma boa apresentação para vocês, espero que gostem muito e deixar todos os nossos canais de comunicação sempre abertos com vocês. Jill, it's your turn. Now you can start. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
It's a pleasure to guide you through today's session, Conducting Systematic Reviews and Literature Searches with Mbase. So as Leon mentioned, by degree and practice, I am a librarian, although I'm not a medical librarian. My experience has been in science libraries, specifically in the U.S. Government, including the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and most recently, the NASA Goddard Space Flight Center. Yes, that NASA. But I'm not a medical librarian, and that's where you typically do see systematic reviews being conducted. But really the process and the purpose is the same regardless of discipline. So I have information to share with you today that is very dense. There's a lot of information I'm going to throw at you, but don't worry, we'll be recording the session and making the recording available along with my deck. The deck will include a lot of links to external sources of information, as well as to some videos, different formatted content. So you'll be able to follow up on the presentation, following the presentation with the deck and the recording. So as I mentioned, we have a jam-packed session today, a lot of information to share. But I'll start first with an overview of what is and what isn't a systematic review. How do systematic reviews help, as well as their pros and cons. We'll next take a look at the key components of a systematic review. And I'll share a 5-step quick start with tips to help get you going to do your own systematic review. Some of the tips that I'll be sharing, as well as some of the sources that I'll be sharing, were recommended to me in some of the interviews that I conducted with some of my medical library friends who routinely aid their researchers in the area of systematic reviews. I'll also share some practical tips for sharing, searching Embase, Scopus, and even Google, and why to search one over another. We'll put all of that knowledge to work with a super high-level example. And last but not least, we'll take a very quick look at the critical appraisal and documenting and reviewing steps, and then wrap up from there. I've also included an appendix, which I'll share with lots of information, both useful and practical. They will include things like recommended articles or sites and tools. That'll all be included in the deck, which we'll share with you too at the end of the webinar. So let's go ahead and get started. So when considering medical information reviews, there are quite a few different kinds of reviews, each serving very different needs. But for the purpose of our time today, we'll focus more specifically on systematic reviews. And frequently, systematic reviews are confused with literature reviews. I've noted some of the differences between them, but very quickly, systematic reviews are a high-level review of literature that aggregates and extracts evidence that is relevant to a question. A systematic review requires rigor and structure. It analyzes the research and the research processes that are described in the literature, and engages more than one person to complete in an average in 18 months. A more thorough definition of a systematic review is a systematic review attempts to identify, appraise, and synthesize all of the empirical evidence that meets pre-specified eligibility criteria to answer a given research question. Researchers conducting systematic reviews use explicit methods aimed at minimizing bias in order to produce a more reliable finding that can be used to inform decision-making. Now, I encourage you to watch the videos shared here. The video is produced by the Cochrane, which is a global network of researchers, health professionals, patients, caregivers, and others who are passionate about improving health outcomes for everyone, everywhere. Representing 130 countries, the Cochrane is an independent network that gathers and summarizes the best evidence from research to help health professionals make informed choices about treatment. And they've been doing this for over 25 years. The Cochrane is the utmost expert in the area of systematic review. And on their website, you'll even find a library of systematic reviews that you can use to get started when working on your own systematic review. So in the interest of time, I'm going to skip this video. I won't play it today, but I do encourage you, when you get the deck, take some time to look at this video to learn directly from the Cochrane what a systematic review is. It'll help you as you embark on your own systematic review journey. A systematic review is labor and time intensive, but the payoffs of doing one include advancing research, offering a stellar opportunity for research under a grant, assisting policymakers to better understand the state of research in a specific space of health research, and offer support to others in making decisions about funding or developing research strategy. So, as I've addressed, conducting a systematic review requires a significant investment of time and effort. And like everything else, there are pros and cons to doing one. Under advantages, a systematic review aggregates all available literature, including any gray literature, such as unpublished studies and current research, which in of itself is a significant output, just that research alone. However, it's a lot less costly than doing a new study, and there's less bias involved. Results can be generalized and made relevant for a wider segment of the population than individual studies, and they are considered to be an evidence-based study unto themselves, which continues the advancement of research. The Cochrane, whom I cited earlier as the leading authority on systematic reviews, prescribes 8 steps in developing a systematic review. They are: formulate the question, plan the review, execute a comprehensive search, allow for unbiased selection and abstraction process, critically appraise the data, synthesize the data, which may include a meta-analysis of the data, interpretation of the research results, and reporting the review. And within all of that, we need to have all the steps of all of those steps described explicitly within the review. So in meeting the work on the 8 steps outlined before, a systematic review takes a lot of time and effort. It's really a team effort, and it requires expertise in different areas, including a librarian for search, literature reviewers to go through all of those articles and comb out the salient points, a statistician to crunch and analyze the data, and a project leader to manage the team and draft the final report. It also requires a clearly defined question, and one that uniquely addresses an area of research. You can use Pico framework to help identify the concepts or aspects of the question. You'll need a written protocol, which provides the rationale for the systematic review and all of the components of the systematic review, including the Pico components, literature searches, data abstraction and data management, and more. The University of Warwick offers public access to its protocol template, which is often cited and referred to and referenced. The links to that is available here so that you can also use the University of Warwick protocol template. Next, you'll need to register the protocol with Prospero, which is the International Registry of Systematic Reviews. Now, the registration is free and is open to anyone embarking on a systematic review. Next, you want to develop your strategies for your literature searches, which also entails documenting each and every step and the results. You can use Mendeley, Elsevier citation management tool, for managing citations that you find in your searches, and then follow the reporting guidelines for publishing your review. It's a very large effort, and it does take a team of subject matter experts and a commitment of time, but there's tremendous merit in doing a systematic review starting with a scientific advancement. To help make it more manageable, or at least I think to make it seem like it's more manageable, I've broken down the initial work towards a systematic review into 5 steps. Let's get started. The first step is to develop your research question. Yes, you need to start by researching the question you actually want to research. And the tools that are recommended for this very purpose are Prospero and Prisma. These are both free tools and accessible to anyone, but are really good steps in defining your research questions. Once you've settled on your research question, the next step is to find examples of systematic and literature reviews, which can help to provide you with a foundation from which to work. Finding existing reviews can help provide you with a great start. Those reviews will actually provide the research terms and the syntax used, as well as the databases that were searched. Now, in a quick search for systematic reviews in Mbase, I found over 344,000. So they're out there. You just have to look for them. Next, you'll want to identify the best databases for your search, as well as the search logic, including search terms that you want to use. You'll want to use the same search with the same strategy in all of your databases, bearing in mind that the syntax may vary from database to database. For example, while an asterisk is a symbol used to truncate a search term in Mbase, that syntax may not work in other databases. You'll want to consult their guide materials to learn how to equate the technology or the terms that you use in Mbase, for example, with those in other databases. And you want to make sure to document the search that you use. And I have some tips to help there too. Now, it's vital that you keep track of your searches, what you searched, and in which databases, plus how many search results you retrieved. I created a spreadsheet that you can access from the Google Drive link on the screen. Download the tracking tool and make it your own. Once you have a search run, I suggest documenting its results in the tracking tool immediately. You don't want to forget what you've done. And include a screen cap so that you have a visual of the search too. I also suggest that you save the search in the database so it can be easily rerun when or if you need to rerun it. And last but not least, you need to manage your results, and that's where Mendeley can come in. Free from Elsevier, Mendeley is a tool that helps you to manage the citations you find in all of your databases. You can share the retrieved records with others on your team too, so that you all have access to the same information, saved in the same format per citation standards and guidelines. Okay, so now let's turn our focus on what to search. To do a comprehensive search, you'll want to search published and unpublished content in different format types. Fortunately for us, Mbase and Scopus make it a lot easier to do a systematic review than it used to be. Can you imagine going through all journal indices to try to find what we're looking for in a manual print world? They aggregate information from multiple, really thousands of publishers. So using Mbase, using Scopus means you don't have to look in a ton of databases and individual publisher or journal sites. It really saves significant time and effort. And don't rule out supplementing your Mbase and Scopus searches with a Google search. I'll talk more about that next. So Google's a great place to start for looking for literature that is called gray literature. So what's gray literature? Gray literature is anything that is not published for commercial purposes. Think information produced by the government, for example. On this slide, you'll find two really good examples of videos that help you to understand what gray literature is and where to find it. So again, in the interest of time, I'm not going to play these videos. They will start to play as I advance the screen, but I do recommend that you check them out later so that you can get a little more oriented to what gray literature is and how to go about finding the gray literature that you need in order to do your comprehensive search. So I love using Google to find gray literature. And the Google Advanced Power Searching Tips really offer some really easy ways to very quickly, very specifically, and very easily find what you're looking for without having to go through a lot of false drops. I actually use these tips a lot to help me for most of my Google searching, whether I'm looking for information for a systematic review or frankly for a restaurant review. I think two that I use most specifically would be searching in URL and searching by file type. By file type, I can narrow my focus to, for example, those results that are in the file format of a PDF. Or in the URL, I want to find, for example, LibGuide in the URL. Searching is a critical part of conducting a systematic review, and errors in the search process may result in a biased or incomplete evidence base. So some quick questions or suggestions for you. Use the intel you find in previously conducted system reviews, including suggestions for databases, as well as the specific search logic. Run test sample searches to try out your search and find key pieces of literature in those search results. As you modify and augment your search, you want to look for these key pieces in each result set as a way of testing the search logic and helping you to keep track of the search process. Within your search results, identify terms that may be helpful for you to include in your searches. This helps you to broaden your keyword sets to ensure that you are using current and broad terms. Proprietary thesauri, including Embase's entry, are a super time and effort saver. They help you to identify related terms that you didn't even know to think about. And lastly, be meticulous in documenting what and how you search, including any and all syntax, such as truncation, proximity, and field names. You need to be detailed in your documentation so that anyone can run the same search you ran and get the same results. So these are the basic-ish steps to get started on a systematic review. Now let's put it into action and let's see how it works. Again, this is at a very high level. The first step is identifying the question. And I've come up with a question with a very specific but fairly easy question. Does adopting a vegetarian or plant-based diet help to manage hypertension better than hydrochlorothiazide? I want to verify it in the Prospero database to see what else is out there. And in doing so, I find one item that looks pretty promising. And when I click to review that document, I see that there was a prior systematic review, but it doesn't really specifically include the focus on diet versus medication as a treatment for hypertension. Next, I want to pull the Prisma Checklist, which will help me to track all of the required bits of information and the order in which I'll need to include it in the final report. This checklist is available in PDF and Word formats. I definitely recommend that you download it and make it your own. Use it as a checklist to help you keep track of what you've done and what you still need to do in order to execute a comprehensive systematic review. So after running my search in Mbase to look for systematic reviews, I find a couple things of interest and I'll want to check them out. Again, prior systematic reviews are important because they can help me to figure out what to search and how to search. Here's the record of interest, plus its metadata. Looking through the record and all of the metadata can help me to get a better feel for the systematic review that was run and what I can learn from it. So once I've identified my terms and I know what databases I want to search, I can get started on the search step of my systematic review. Again, for the purpose of this webinar, I'm keeping things pretty simple and very straightforward. So I'll use 3 main terms as my search words and focus my search in Embase and Scopus. Scopus and Embase are both databases developed and provided by Elsevier, but they have very different audiences, functions, and content. So think of Scopus as our all-purpose database. It's very broad in its coverage, running everything from anthropology to zoology and everything in between. But Mbase is developed specifically for medical researchers and for medical research needs. Not only is its content specific to medical research and the way medical researchers work with searching, from the search pages designed along Pico concepts to the proprietary thesaurus, everything is specific to medical professionals' needs. Also in the appendix, you'll find a tip sheet that will help you to understand how Scopus differs from Mbase. To get my search going, I am going to use the guided Pico search form in Mbase. So as you know, Pico, patient, intervention, comparison, and outcome, is the widely accepted question framework used in evidence-based medicine and practice to help clinicians diagram clinical scenarios into clinical questions. Now, generally, when implementing a Pico question in a database, I'd have to build a traditional search and sift through a lot of results to find those that meet my Pico requirements. Again, a lot of time and a lot of effort involved. Mbase's Pico tool integrates complex search functions into an intuitive guided format, separating each Pico concept into its own separate search phase, which saves me time and effort. In addition to using the time and effort saving Pico search form, I'm going to take advantage of Entry, which provides a hierarchical arrangement of the controlled vocabulary proprietary to Mbase. I love using controlled vocabulary because it helps me to identify the related terms and term variations without having to think quite so hard and spend quite so much time typing each and every other term. So to go ahead and get started, I have used the Pico search form, and I've put in a very basic search for hypertension. Underneath my search entry of hypertension, you see all of the variations that could be considered for my hypertensive search. I'm going to go ahead and select that very first one with just under 800,000 records found. After clicking on that, I get all of the variations of hypertension, all of the related terms that I might want to incorporate into my search in order to make it a very broad search. So as you see on the screen where it says population, it's drawing from all of my search terms under entry related to hypertension. When clicking on hypertension, it'll draw it to my population and allow me to expand and apply all of the 20 synonyms that are related to entry's hypertension listing within the entry thesaurus. So here you can see I'm looking at the exploded entry for hypertension and looking at all the various treatments. I'm going to go ahead and use that exploded term and add my synonyms. When I click on the add synonyms shown here, that is when my synonyms addition becomes blue and has applied all of those related terms to my search entry. Again, saving me a lot of time and effort and preventing me from having to hand type all of those related terms. It encompasses all of the variations for me so that I don't have to think of all of those terms and enter them. So now that I've done that for my first term, hypertension, I'm going to go ahead and use the same process to search for terms related to my second term, vegetarian. So I'll enter vegetarian into my search screen. And from there, look in the entry for vegetarian. I'll explode on that. I'll get 4,500 plus results and then add my synonyms related to vegetarian diet. In doing so, again, my screen will show blue for using all of my terms related to vegetarian. So I have my population with my hypertension. I have vegetarian diet with my intervention. And so next I'm going to use comparison. And so I've already started by typing in hydrochloro. I'm going to use the word wheel if you want to help me with the spelling of the rest. I find what I'm looking for, hydrochlorothiazide. I will click on that. And then it'll bring up for me all of the related terms. From here, I just want to search at the root. So I'll click on hydrochlorothiazide and enter all of the search terms, all the synonyms as I did before. Again, turning that blue. And in the process of simply adding up all of my search terms, Mbase has already processed my search. I don't have to hit search or go. It's automatically run for me. And I find that I have located just 2 results, which shows me this is actually a field of study that has maybe yet to really be entertained. Again, this is a very simple search that I'm using for the interest of time in this demo, and a very specific one looking only at the comparison of using hydrochlorothiazide and hydrochlorothiazide alone. So when I go to look at the results, I see the search strategy that was used to actually run the search. What you see is exactly what it looks like under the hood when searching using controlled vocabulary. So for example, while I searched vegetarian diets, entry was so much more comprehensive, searching for vegetarian diet, which include vegetarian diet or diet vegetarian, plant-based diet, vegetarian diet, and vegetarian eating patterns, as well as vegetarianism. So it really did a lot of the heavy lifting for me, if you will, by identifying the related terms and providing those for me. So I'm going to review my 2 results, document my search technique, and export my results into Mendeley. Now, to help me document what I searched, I use this spreadsheet with individual worksheets to document my logic and my results by database. And in addition to entering the search strategy, I also include a screen cap so that I have a visual of the search. Sometimes seeing is believing, but it also helps me to remember exactly what I've done and the results that I've gotten above and beyond the text that I've entered. Again, I've shared the link to this spreadsheet using a Google Drive link, which I showed a few slides back. I welcome you to download it and you make it your own, kind of customize it to your own needs. And again, while I've entered the very high level search, I want to document how the search ran using the entry results. Again, I'll copy and paste not only the search logic, but also a screen cap of the search so that I can record it visually also. Again, last but not least, I need to export my results into Mendeley. Again, the neat thing about Mendeley is that it's free and it also manages my citations from every database I need to search and allows me to search that bibliography and share that bibliography with my teammates. Okay, so once we finished our search with Mbase and we finished documenting it, we finished throwing our results into Mendeley. We need to do it all over again, verbatim, but this time in Scopus. So I'll start first by looking for systematic reviews in Scopus. And I found none that meet the very specific requirements that I was looking for. Again, not altogether unexpected because I have so narrowly focused my search for the purposes of this webinar. Next, I'll run my search. Now, while Scopus and Mbase may share some medical content, that's really where the similarities begin and end. So there's no Pico tailored search form in Scopus, and there's no entry term thesaurus in Scopus. I'll have to run my very basic search using the 3 terms without any further logic than and connectors in order to search in Scopus. So I put in my 3 terms, and I want to search in the broadest area possible, being article title, abstract, and keywords. And from that, I have my 3 results. So from here, I can go ahead, again, document how I searched, putting in the key terms I used, the connectors I used, the results. I'll also put in a screenshot. I'll save the search so that I can reuse that should I need to rerun it. And then I'll output my results into Mendeley. So that is the focus on the literature searching part. The next is the most challenging, the critical appraisal. My next 2 steps are the critical appraisal and the documenting and reviewing. And for a critical appraisal, this is where having a team comprised of subject matter experts really helps. As a team, we'll analyze the results to identify everything from what the research question was and why was the research conducted to the Pico components of the study, as well as a consideration for the study's bias and the assessment of the data and its analysis. I don't want to short shrift this process because, again, the literature part is kind of the easiest part. The hardest part is going through all of those literature outputs and trying to dig into that research to really understand the who, what, where, how, and when of that research. And then combing through that, aggregating all of that intel to basically develop a whole new research. It's a heavy lift. And then for the next and the last stage, documenting and reviewing, I'll need to document and review the collective results and also my assessments of those results. I've shared an assortment of websites and tools that you can use for these two stages. They have 4 screenshots or 4 slides altogether of websites and also tools that are recommended to help you in the documenting and reviewing process. So this is a very high level look at what a systematic review is, how it's used, and how it's developed. But by no means do I expect we're all going to be experts at the end of this webinar. But I do hope that I imparted a few suggestions and some tools that you can use as you develop your own systematic reviews. So to recap, we learned that a systematic review takes procedures and learnings from previous studies and aggregates all of that learning, all of that information for a fresh and easier to follow look at addressing a question. It's beneficial for understanding how a certain technique or drug works. A systematic review can provide new perspectives, identify gaps in knowledge where additional research may be beneficial, and also to reduce the bias in the research. As additional advantages, systematic reviews are certainly less costly than executing a whole new research endeavor, although investments in time themselves take a lot less time than a new research program would require. But it's important to remember that systematic reviews really do require a team effort and also significant investment of time from each of the members on that team. And so I'd like to share with you now some of the materials that I think might help you in your own systematic review journey, materials that I have put into the appendix. So first up is an article, Why Systematic Reviews Matter, which was written in Elsevier Connect. And I want to share this article because Elsevier Connect in of itself is a good tool because it provides access to articles just like this one, written by your peers in research to help researchers connect with other researchers to share information and ideas. You never know what you find in Elsevier Connect. It's way much more than just an average marketing newsletter. So I do recommend that you sign up and receive the email alerts from Elsevier Connect so that you have access to this article and others like it as produced by Elsevier Connect. Now, especially in their early days, systematic reviews were a bit unwieldy. They lacked standard approaches. So the Institute of Medicine provides those necessary standards to help you to develop a structured and solid systematic review. The Cochrane is the international authority for systematic reviews. They also review and quality check submitted systematic reviews. They have a tremendous number of educational aids, as well as resources that you can use in developing your own systematic reviews, including a library of vetted systematic reviews. And all of this is free. Within their learning tools, they offer self-directed modules to help provide a more scholarly look at systematic reviews than what I offer today. When reviewing systematic review literature and training, you'll frequently see references to the Cochrane's guides and handbooks, and they're all available for free from the same website. On these next 2 slides, I shared 2 different examples of systematic reviews that I thought could help to serve as a reference to get you started, trying to identify what is entailed in a final systematic review, what kind of levels of detail and effort, so that you kind of have an opportunity to gauge the effort through someone else's experience. And then, as I mentioned, two other ways to find examples of systematic reviews are in Mbase, again, with over 344,000, and also in the Cochrane's own library of systematic reviews. And again, the library that is available in the Cochrane library is a collection of systematic reviews that have been submitted to the Cochrane for their review. So they actually rerun the systematic review that's already been done, so that they have their own kind of unbiased check of the materials that have been cited and used in the original systematic review submitted to the Cochrane. To help you to better understand the differences between Mbase and Scopus, I provided you with a screenshot of a comparison to help you understand when to search Scopus and when you might need to search Mbase for more precision in your medical research. Mbase or Medline. Now, Mbase covers Medline, plus a whole lot more, over 2,000 publications more, and conference proceedings, and even more. So maybe just Mbase? Well, here's a quick reference, if you will, for Mbase from the Cochrane. And at the bottom, I provided a link to a webpage that does a really great job at helping us to understand the differences between the two. So according to the Cochrane reviews of interventions should include a search of Mbase if access to Mbase is available to the review team. Mbase, at least as of June 2018, contains over 30 million records from more than 8,000 currently published journals. Mbase now also includes Medline records, thus technically allowing both databases to be searched simultaneously. Further details on the implications of this for searching are available in the online technical supplement. And it goes on to speak to the different components that comprise Mbase. But I really took a lot of solace when I read this review from the Cochrane, again, the leading authority of systematic reviews, saying it's sufficient to search Mbase and Mbase alone instead of searching Mbase and Medline. So Medline is encompassed within Mbase. So that is a very high level look, as I told you, at systematic reviews. But I hope, again, that you were able to glean some tips and some suggestions to help you in your own systematic review path. So let's go ahead and look at some of the questions that we've received. And Lillian, I may need some help with the translations.
Sure. So let's start with the Q&A. The first one is from Silas Gouveia. It says that, let me check. You've mentioned that the systematic review should be made by a team of researchers. So it's not feasible in case of master's dissertations or doctoral thesis?
Oh, that's a really good point. And to be honest, I'm not an expert in this area, but it would seem to me that because a systematic review often requires skills that would not be available or owned by one person, and also due to the amount of work that is entailed in doing a systematic review, it really isn't feasible to do a systematic review by yourself. And indeed, when I was looking at systematic reviews in the literature after doing a search in Mbase, for example, one of the things that struck me was that every one that I looked at required a team of researchers in the author's fields of those systematic reviews. So I'm not an authority on this, but I would assume, based on those two aspects, the fact that you need, people who are able to not only do the literature searches and also all of the analysis of those, which requires some data crunching as well as the analysis, that it's really not optimal to have just one person do a systematic review. Although, again, that's just I think a gross generalization, but I don't believe that it could be done by just one person towards a master's or work or dissertation for a PhD. That's something I think I would consult on with your advisor.
Okay. The other one is from Rosane Costa. She's asking if the Prospero and Prisma can help with the creation of the strategy for the search.
Not so much the strategy of the search, well, of the search for a topic, perhaps. Prospero in particular will provide you with thousands of previously conducted systematic reviews so that you can kind of gauge what you're looking at, what you're envisioning, and whether or not that has been done by others in other systematic reviews. And then looking in those systematic reviews, you can identify from those previously executed systematic reviews what databases were searched and what search terms were used. So I think indirectly, you can use Prospero in particular to help you with your search for not just the topic that you want to search, but also within that, what databases and search terms do you want to take in executing yours?
Okay. There is another question from anonymous attendee asking if you believe that someone can do this the search directly using the journals instead of the databases can skew the search.
Well, when you do a systematic review, the biggest challenge and also the best output of a systematic review is that very comprehensive look at everything that has ever been published on your particular question, as well as things that haven't necessarily been published in scholarly materials, i.e. the stuff in gray literature. So if you're only focusing on materials that have been written in, for example, the British Medical Journal, you're missing out on all of the other studies that have been published in other titles, as well as any other gray literature that may be out there. So it's not truly a systematic review. And at that point, I think it would be more of a literature review rather than a systematic review.
Okay. There's another question from Tony Flavio. He's asking about the difference between a literature systematic review and literature review, and the masterpiece in research.
Absolutely. So I, for example, have done literature reviews, but I've not done a systematic literature review in the definition that we've used in the context with medical research. To do a literature review, you would do kind of the same steps that you would take in conducting your research for a systematic review. You would look in every database imaginable to try to come up with all of the literature on your particular area of interest. The big difference is that with a literary review, that's kind of where the effort starts and stops. After doing your literature review, you would download all of your hits, all your results, and you would provide some narrative or abstraction for each of the records that you found. And that would be your final product. Whereas the systematic review takes all of the literature that you found, and it requires you to kind of act as a researcher in each of those studies, trying to pull out elements such as the Pico elements, looking at the data extraction procedures, and basically redo the research in each of those research studies in order to come up with a new research based on all of the research findings from all of those previous research efforts. So it's a very different process in the tail end, if you will, although both a literature review and a systematic review both require that upfront investment of doing the search for literature. But that, again, is really where that comparison ends.
Okay, so Tony is asking another 2 questions that I'm going to do all together. I'm going to, as Cristiane is asking me, I'm going to read this in Portuguese and then in English. Ele está perguntando se a revisão sistemática de literatura deve ser feita em... inclusive a Cris colocou a pesquisa para vocês irem preenchendo, por favor, tá? A pesquisa do webinar, se vocês puderem, já está aqui na telinha também. O Tony está perguntando se a revisão sistemática de literatura deve ser feita em vários idiomas, se isso é uma regra, e se existe o limite de base de dados para a realização da revisão sistemática de literatura. So Jill, he's also asking 2 questions regarding the literature systematic review. Does it have to be made in many languages? Is this a rule to make in many languages? And how is, and he's also asking if there is any limit of database to do the literature systematic review?
Tony, excellent questions. For the first one, with regards to different languages, in my research of systematic reviews, I did find examples where multiple languages were searched. Although I don't believe it's a requirement that you exhaust your search in multiple languages. For the second one, I've actually seen systematic reviews that compare and contrast the research that was found in just 2 databases. Generally, it's Scopus and Web of Science. I'm not sure that those are traditional systematic reviews. It seems to me that to a degree, that's more of a literature review than a systematic review. But from what I have seen, it is possible to do a systematic review and do it justice by searching a more streamlined version of database selections. Although, of course, that would need to be noted and explained in your setup of your systematic review.
Okay. So there is, it's not a question, it's a comment from Gonçalves. Na verdade, eu vou dizer em português primeiro, o Gonçalves, da UFRN, está comentando que é impossível um único autor em uma revisão em função da análise do risco de viés e nenhuma revista aceita com um único autor. So, Jill, he's mentioning that it's not a question, it's a commentary, that it's not possible to have a review with just one author because of the risk of bias. And he also mentions that a journal is not going to accept this review from only one author. So he's just mentioning this here. There is another question from anonymous attendee asking your opinion about when you, let me read in Portuguese first. Qual a opinião da palestrante ao pesquisar a Embase? Devemos utilizar o filtro para excluir registros Medline ou recuperamos tudo e depois deletamos utilizando outras ferramentas? Eu acho que eu posso te ajudar com essa pergunta, mas eu vou dizer para a Jill primeiro. So she's asking, this person is anonymous, is asking about when you do a search in Embase, you should exclude the Medline registers, or you should retrieve everything and then you delete it with other tools. I don't know if it's clear for you.
No, it is. So my understanding is that you would do the search and include those registers in your record count, and then remove those from when you do your analysis. So what I would do is I would output them from Mbase into Mendeley, and then in my extraction process, I would acknowledge that X number of records retrieved from the Medline coverage in Mbase were removed because they were registers. I think that's how I've seen it described, and I think how I would recommend.
Okay. Another question, anonymous, is it's already in English. It says, what other sources of gray literature search?
So definitely check out that one slide that I shared in which there are different kinds of gray literature that are prescribed, along with those 2 videos. But just top of mind, gray literature could include a blog. It could include a video. It could include a newspaper article. It could include a dissertation or a patent. It could include a government document. It could include a hearing testimonial from, for example, a US congressional hearing. So it's anything that hasn't been commercially published. So it's very, very broad and very open, both in its interpretation and also in its execution.
Okay, so the last 2 ones here, because we are ahead of time, but one is another one from Tonio Flávio. I'm going to say in Portuguese. Ele pergunta: a RSL deve anteceder qualquer tipo de pesquisa de mestrado e doutorado para garantir sua eficácia? So Jill, he's asking if the literature systematic review should be done previously to the master's and doctoral search in order to guarantee its efficacy?
Oh, that's an area outside of my expertise. So I'm not sure that I can assist with that. I think that's probably another one that I would ask of a mentor or an advisor. But it seems to me like you would want to do a literature review, if only to help with your own development as you traverse in your academic career towards your postgraduate studies, so that you are familiar with the resources, the studies, the experts, the different universities, for example, that are supporting that, and also the funders who are sponsoring the research in those areas.
Yeah, true. So the last one is from Anonymous as well. I'm going to say in Portuguese. A revisão sistemática é sinônimo de uma revisão de meta-análise ou elas são diferentes? Jill, this person is asking if the systematic review and the meta-analysis review are synonymous each other or they are different.
They are actually different. So, and again, the systematic review, if you will, is the largest and the broadest of all of the reviews. The meta-analysis, as I understand it, would take components of the literature review and kind of augment it. So it's not quite a systematic review, but you're going through and you're also looking at all of the different research components, but without actually reinvestigating the research as you would in a systematic review. So it's kind of between a literature review and a systematic review, where it gets up to the step, but stops before you actually have to, reanalyze and reassess all of the research that has been produced in that study. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. So we don't have any question more. We have a lot of compliments from people that are just starting their systematic review. They feel engaged after your presentation. They are keen to start this as soon as possible. And they are going to wait for new webinars like this one in the future. They're just giving a lot of congrats to us for this type of event.
So I see one of the comments is, and this is my, I'm sorry, my stupid American accent, Patricia Perez. It looks like she's a librarian.
Yes.
And I want to note that when you're doing a systematic review, your librarian is going to be your best resource. Librarians are skilled in finding information that doesn't want to be found. Librarians can help you to do a lot of the heavy lift of that research that helps you get started in your systematic review effort. So, you know, I think my best piece of advice would be make friends with your local librarian. Use your local librarian as a gift and a resource that keeps on giving. Your librarian is going to be your key to success with your systematic review.
Yeah, I'm sure about it. So thank you very much for all of the attendees that couldn't answer the poll yet. So it's over already, but thank you very much. Chris, do you have any final comments?
No, just thank you, Jill, for the excellent top of our presentation. Obrigada a todos. Obrigada a todos que participaram. Foi um prazer poder, finalmente, foi uma sessão, a Lilian, deixa eu pôr minha câmera aqui, foi uma sessão que a Lilian sabe, difícil de achar alguém com a expertise da Jill para poder conduzir isso para vocês, e a gente tem muita responsabilidade naquilo que a gente se propõe a fazer, então, por isso que a gente demorou tanto para colocar de pé, então eu estou super feliz que saiu, assim como o nosso fechamento do ano, acho que é o nosso último webinar do ano, se eu não estou enganada, e vários elogios, então assim, a gente fica muito feliz de poder proporcionar isso para vocês, e esperamos que o ano que vem a gente possa contar com a Jill, que agora eu já sei onde ela está, entendeu? Fica facinho da gente pegar ela aqui para a gente, ela é muito disputada na Elsevier, mas a gente vai dar um jeitinho. E é isso, gente. Muito obrigada pela participação. Até agora, já passamos 11 minutos, estamos ainda com 100 pessoas aqui com a gente. Então, poxa, maravilhoso. Terminar o ano assim, com esse ciclo de webinars, depois de tantos webinars que a gente ofereceu, né? Não sei quantos de vocês participaram aí, mas até já deixo... eu vi que bastante gente chegou, não pelas nossas redes sociais, e por outros caminhos, então aproveito para deixar para vocês, vão receber por e-mail, mas fica aí o convite para que vocês sigam nossas redes. A gente está presente assim em todas as plataformas digitais hoje, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, a gente tem podcast, então assim, não deixe de seguir, porque tem muito conteúdo valioso, assim como esse, de outras plataformas, webinars para autores. Foi muito legal mesmo essa oportunidade de a gente fazer tanto conteúdo para vocês esse ano. Os endereços vão ir, mas é o Elsevier lá que vocês podem encontrar. E vamos mandar tudo para vocês, assim como as instruções para ver essa gravação e a apresentação em PDF. Então, obrigada a todos.
Isso aí, muito obrigada, pessoal. Boa tarde. Tem meu e-mail aí na tela. Se alguém quiser mais informações de Embase, agendar treinamento agora no decorrer de 2021, estamos super à disposição.
Muita gente pediu, Lilian, muita gente pediu aqui na nossa pesquisa ainda.
Ótimo. Então, a gente já começa o ano agendando esses treinamentos para vocês. Jill, thank you very much. It was a great pleasure having you here with us. All of the meetings we've had together. And looking forward to work with you again in 2021.
Thank you, likewise. Thank you very much.
E obrigada, Ricardo, como sempre, pelo excelente trabalho aí de dar suporte para a nossa comunidade.
Verdade,
obrigada,
isso aí.
Vou encerrar aqui, tá bem?
Obrigada, pessoal. Tchau, tchau. Bye.
Bye.